Welcome everyone to 2021. I don't know about you, but the fact that it's not going to be called MOSER20's anymore and we are actually moving on for 2020 is really inspiring. And I'm sure that even though 2021 didn't start off too sparkly, it will get better. Now, since we have started a new year and a new MOSER, I just want to re-establish the show requirements for reviews before we go on, as I think I need to add a couple of things. So, sticking with the original requirement back from June, if it doesn't have voice acting, it's not really complete, so I can't review it. Unlike every other aspect that can still be reviewed, even if it's performed poorly. Now, another requirement that I add is, the show has to have a motive to improve. Every show creator should do what they want. It can be a joke show, it could be a serious, lighthearted show, it's whatever, and it's none of my business to judge them for it or look down at them for it. However, if a creator wants their show to be reviewed, the show or the creator has to have a motivation to improve their episodes. Again, this does not apply to everyone, and if someone doesn't want their show reviewed, I'm completely okay with it. Just tell me. And the last requirement that it has to have is that it had to be released in the span of this month, and that the show is still going on and continued. Sometimes people suggest to me some shows, but they were about 2 months ago, or they were discontinued, which is completely fine. You don't have to make a show. However, there is no point in reviewing that. If it's discontinued, the criticism wouldn't help anyone. And if it was released 2 months ago, not only would it not fit the format of this project, but also it is a high chance that the next episode is already in production, so the review wouldn't do shit. And I really do want it to matter and help improving it. And I hope this made sense, because I didn't want to sound like some know-it-all, as it wasn't my intention, and I'm usually not good with words. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them in the comments. But now, with all of that out of the way, it's time. Let's get into this year's first MOSER. MOSER21's January. For starters, I want to mention that for every positive aspect, there's almost always a negative aspect to go alongside it. Same with it being the other way around. There are a lot of issues that I mentioned that have something good or even great about them. For instance, the writing. There's some really neat ideas there. The challenge was split, which would have been a bit awkward if it wasn't handled properly. However, it was handled in a way that didn't distract from the episode as a whole, which is impressive. However, while I do think the challenge itself was fine and the pacing was really good, the characters interacting with the challenge are fairly one note and could be described with one word. They lack a memorable impression that makes the viewer care about them. For example, Microphone is flirtatious, and that's about it. The only thing that leaves an impression is skirt, and how about she can be determined yet mean, and possibly Tourmaline for actually having a backbone. Some characters, like Canada Flag, feel like they don't have anything for them. Or even if they do, like Microphone, their only purpose is to be a nuisance to the other characters and nothing more. Not to mention that some of the dialogue between some of the characters is confusing. One moment, Candle and Pine Tree could be fighting over something dumb, then the next they become buddies, and then they continue to fight once more. I understand the type of dynamic they're trying to have, but it feels like we're watching best friends fight over rivals. Voice acting was really good. Everyone felt in character. No criticism to really add here, but I do have a few regarding to the editing. Some scenes feel awkward, or having no background music, and for some instances, audio editing even felt awkward. For example, when Candle is cut off mid-sentence, but the line itself didn't cut. Aside from a few points, the editing itself was fairly consistent. The design and animatic are also really good. I especially like Lollipop's asset and how consistent the animation looks, even if it looked a bit stiff at some points. However, one specific background looked a bit too pixely. It was hard to tell that it was originally a bathroom before Skirt interacted with it. The episode hasn't done anything too unique or impressive to keep me too interested, apart from the challenge being a two-parter. That said, I rate the writing 3.5, 5 for voice acting and design, 4.5 for animatic, 4 for editing, 2.5 for creativity, with a total score of 24.5 out of 30. I am sure this can improve, and I really want to see how the characters can expand more. But now, on to the next review. Well, this was one episode that I really enjoyed. A lot of the stuff in Moss is kinda clever to me, and the humor is pretty good, along with the challenge and how they executed it. I loved that they went to another dimension to get a fish, and it showed how much they can expand with a challenge like that. But I do feel like it has a problem with the characters. There are way too many, and there's enough for me that are memorable. Sure, they have colorful personalities, but when it comes to remembering them, there's only two I can remember, and it's Furry Ball and Shapey, just for their unique designs. This problem isn't for MOS in particular, it's for every show with so many contestants. But I do have to say that the voice acting was really good. I'm impressed how they have unique voices for each character, and all of them are very expressive. Animation and design go amazing together, especially in this show. It was definitely my favorite thing about the episode. It seems like they really went with the idea of giving the contestants their actual real-life size, so they're small and chibi, which I think adds a lot to the show. I love how the elimination took a lot of inspiration from the 80s era. At least to me it seemed like it. The sound design is also really good. It feels like the sounds are all matching to what's actually going on the screen, and they don't feel fake or not related. With that, I have to compliment how the fishes looked. They all looked so much more different than the other, and I was astounded by that. Especially the skyfish. God, I love it. The editing itself was good. There wasn't anything that made it too special nor bad in any way. And for creativity, it just absolutely flowed with it. As I said before, a lot of the challenge revolved around it, and it shows a lot in the episode. Now let's get to the points. I'll give 3.5 for writing and 5 for everything else. Total of 28.5 out of 30. The show itself is really good. I just think it needs to fix the little problem and focus more on individual characters and give them more something memorable. But now, on to the next review. Alright, so this episode was a pretty decent start. Even though it lacked in some parts of it, it wasn't all too bad. However, there are a few problems that need to be addressed in order for this to improve. A major one was with the writing. Everything felt scattered. It felt like the only person with a personality that's consistent is Safety Goggles. Everyone else have a base for their personality, but they feel bland or mixed with other personalities. An example of this is Pressure Cooker. When you see them first, they run away from Marble and her team, but when Cross finds them, they just give up and go with them. It doesn't really make sense because it seems like it just switched from what we saw a second ago. However, I gotta go on a tangent about Tangerine for a second. They seem to be shy and very scared to give their opinions, but then they have an outburst when people don't listen to them or talk back to them. It seems more appropriate that they wouldn't answer back or be mad but just stay hurt. Also, everything surrounding them doesn't make sense. For example, when Cross says they should go alone because they wouldn't contribute, wouldn't that make more sense to let someone go with them just for that reason? If alone they can't contribute, how would it negatively affect whoever they're supposed to go with? And also, when Tangerine brought up a genuine question, they were told to grow up when it had nothing to do with the question itself. But enough with the tangent, now onto the general writing again. I feel like the whole start with Boba and Blue Raspberry could have all been cut and just start from the train itself. It seemed like a huge waste of time, especially considering a lot of the contestants didn't appear in the train, unlike some, which also would have helped to not make them look too bland, but also to show them before they get to the area, so it doesn't look like they popped out of nowhere, which eventually what it felt like. Even having 5 lines per person in the train would have been enough, just to show their existence and their personality. First Aid Kit, Ice Pop, and Polaroid had no speaking roles before the intro, which makes them really forgotten. And a lot of the characters have a lot more focus than the others, just because they appeared before. With that, I have to say that First Aid Kit was not only obvious to get eliminated first, but also it felt like being mean was her entire personality trait. But other than that, I feel like it has a pretty good leading to it. It just needs a bit more sense of direction for the characters. Anyway, voice acting was pretty okay. I didn't really notice anything too bad other than some monotone voices. For example, Pressure Cooker. Other than that, animation was off. The expressions didn't change that much, especially in the train scene, and some didn't feel like they matched the voices, but it did stay consistent, so good job on that. Design was kinda all over the place, because some of the assets looked really good, but some of them were really not matching to what the character was. For example, Microphone, Pretzel, Megaphone, and Cross had really good and detailed and accurate assets. You can tell what they were, without really needing their name. However, characters like Cheesecake Slice, Halloween Basket, Cappy, and Marble were really hard to tell what they were based on their designs. With that, the backgrounds looked really good, although pixely in some scenes. And in the elimination scene, the fire really didn't look like it belonged there. It seemed really out of place. Speaking of out of place, I felt like the editing could use some work. The pacing was honestly not so good. This goes into editing because when they walked, it continued for way too long and it could have been cut a lot earlier, and it also didn't sync with the animation that much, so I wasn't sure what it should be noted as. The gaps between some interactions take a lot of time and it's something that should be fixed. With that, I also noticed how there were a bunch of people that were hard to hear. For example, Jar, Microphone, Pretzel, and Marble. They just needed to increase their volume because the music kinda lapped over them. As for creativity, there wasn't much in the episode. I feel like finding Pressure Cooker as an alternative challenge was pretty cool instead of what the actual challenge that was planned, but that's all I can think of for this. Anyway, onto the final points. Writing gets 2.5, voice acting 4.5, animation 3.5, design 3, editing 2.5, and creativity 2. An overall of 18 out of 30. I am more than sure that this can improve, and it just needs a bit more practicing. Best of luck with it. Now, onto the next review. I have to say, I'm really happy with how popular this show has become. There's a lot of effort that goes into it, and I'm really glad to see that it gets the attention it deserves. The writing is okay. The challenge is really out there and creative, along with the fact that it was paced well enough to keep me engaged. However, the scene with Slushy and Snowy felt a bit too cheesy, and TV's tantrum was a bit out there. Like, it could have been cut short, and it would have been enough. I don't feel it was unreasonable for it to happen, but that alongside with TV's voice can be granting to hear due to a vocoder being too extreme. Aside from her voice, the voice acting itself got better, along with the editing. The design is also incredibly pleasing to look at. All the various backgrounds and how nice they look, it really mixed in with the style the show has. All these aspects really stayed relatively consistent, which is something I can't say too much in regards for the animation. Look, I do understand why it is fairly inconsistent, and the individual scenes themselves look great, even fantastic at points, but it can be a bit distracting when the style switch is a bit too drastic from one scene to the next. There isn't really a lot more that needs to be said, so for the scores, writing gets 4, voice acting 4.5, animation 4, design and editing 5, and creativity 4. An overall of 26.5 out of 30. This is still just a really nice and cozy viewing experience, despite all the little issues that I do have with it. But now, onto the next review. Before I get to the actual review, I have to say that this episode was really enjoyable. I feel like the show has really improved ever since its beginning, especially writing. The writing was definitely the most enjoyable part of the episode, even though I kinda expected more in the challenge because of the line, "You can make as many as you want." I just thought there would be more dishes and it'll expand more, but it probably would have dragged on too much. Even though this episode has the same challenge concept that some other shows did before, it did it in its own way, which really is what matters. The lore teaser is so intriguing, and I can't wait to see what it's about. I'll be honest though, I wanted to see more of Shopping Bag, because as of right now, it seems like he's stuck in his party guy persona. I'll also add that the conversation between Game & Watch and Ice Bag could have been handled better, as it feels like she forgot about someone important so fast. All the voice acting was really good. Snowflake needed a bit more emotion, but it's nothing too bad. The only thing that really bothered me was sometimes when VHS spoke, his mic popped a lot. The voice acting itself was still really good though. The animation was also really good. Definitely an improvement. They all stayed in the same style, and I only noticed a few expressions that were off. The random faces were actually really fitting, and I'm glad they were added. I'm also really glad that they added so much detail in design. Everything looked so good. The food looked really detailed, and the assets, like Shopping Bag with the ingredients, was done really well. I'm really impressed. I'm also impressed by the editing. The only bone I have to pick with the editing is that some of the jokes would have been delivered better if the music caught off as they happened, and give them more focus. For example, the spice joke with Game & Watch, or the explosion with Pocket Watch and Root Beer. The music caught off and it was a lot more funny, because it gave it focus. But other than that, the smooth sailing on it. I did really like how it differs from what I expected in the challenge, but I do wish there was a bit more done with it. I do think that having a tie meaning a double elimination is pretty clever, and I like that twist. But other than that, we should just get the scores. I'll give 4 for writing, 4 for voice acting, 5 for animation and design, 4.5 for editing, and 4 for creativity. So an overall of 27 out of 30. As I said in the beginning, the show really improved from what it started as, and I really want to see how this can improve more. So for the overall summary for this month, I have to say, in the object show aspect, 2021 didn't start bad at all. I have to say, I'm sorry if I missed some shows, as there were a lot this month that I couldn't do, as I was really busy a lot with stuff, and I try to do as many reviews as I can, but life manages to get in the way, and that's also a part of the reason why this video also came out in delay for a couple of days. However, I'm still hoping to have a lot more positivity for 2021, and I really hope that my reviews can help with that. But for now, I'll see you all next time.